What'd you do this morning?
Got up at 5. It was already almost 70 degrees,
Hmm.
which is quite a change from being in the lower 50s. So I
Wow.
realized that I better get out and water. So I watered everything because it's going to be, like 90 here. That's
In a
about as
few
hot as,
weeks or
no, today.
today? Wow.
That's about as hot as it gets.
It's gonna. Yeah, it was like 88 last week here. I was like, whoa,
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like that.
you're gonna have 88 today too. I looked at your weather.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the last few weeks have really kind of started to turn on as far as like summertime weather goes. I've been drinking
But
a
you
lot more
get
water
but you get rain.
pretty much every day,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a lot. Like I still have to water the garden.
Mm-hmm.
I replanted 3 banana plants. Well, I took the pups off the base and transplanted them throughout the yard, and those are taking.
Fun.
And then I've got about 20 taro starts. Like I don't know. It's the first time I've grown it, so I don't know when I can harvest, but I think it's actually pretty quick. So that's exciting. And they're beautiful leaves. And I want to we can make lau lau, which is you take the taro leaves and you wrap the meat in them, and then you steam it or put it in the imu. And so I'll have the taro leaves, I'll have the banana leaves to wrap. We'll have the pig, and it'll just be like full on. We have coconuts. I mean, everything is like already walking
And
distance
the
away.
and the not to mention the taro root itself
Yeah, you can throw that in there too.
and the bananas.
Mm-hmm. Like a stem from the oregano.
You
It's
need a
so
little
fun.
sea. You need a little seaweed.
Yeah, that'd be cool. There is actually harvestable limu here. There is a lot of varieties that people will collect off the rocks. Um, yeah, it's like anywhere that native peoples lived, you had to have your bread basket. And the cool thing about like Western Price Foundation is they went around and checked out all the different bread baskets around the world. I think they went to 8 different indigenous groups and saw that they ate completely different things, yet they had healthy kids generation after generation. Their teeth and bone structure were perfect, like less than 2%, um, teeth decay, even up until even 90-year-olds had perfect teeth. And this is without dentistry. And then as soon as like all the processed foods started coming in, mainly sugar and flour, those were the things that were traded by the sailors. As within one generation, all those kids started showing the same birth defects, bone malformities, not a big enough jaw to house all the teeth, including the wisdom teeth, crooked teeth, rotten teeth, like started just from one generation of eating the processed food. And before that, they had lived for thousands upon thousands of years just with what they had in their bread basket. And some of these were like deep in the valleys in like Europe, where all they had was like the flour they grew and the cheese they produced. And that was their main staple, was like Swiss cheese and bread that they fermented. But they get this. So they took the bread and they hung it in the barn for 2 weeks before they ate it, knowing that it would continue to digest down, because these people knew like what you eat and how you feel has an effect. Like they wanted to have really good feeling guts like I do. And so they noticed that they ate the bread before then they would upset their stomach. But if they let the yeast do its thing and fully digest the bread for 2 weeks, then it was digestible. Pretty crazy. So like, and then you have, but the cool thing about Western Price is like I mean, that's the cookbook that I used to learn how to cook, besides watching all the TV shows as a kid. But like that was the thing that I was like, oh, nourishing traditions. Like I'm gonna just like dive into this and do all the recipes. And that was in Tijuana, where I just like I looked at that cookbook, got my inspiration, and kind of like learned how to build a solid nutritional meal off of what we know, and then also off of like how to cook things properly so that they actually maintain nutritional integrity. But yeah, the cool thing that really blows my mind about Western Price's like research is, look, like all these people lived in various places, and they all had different diets, and they all had very healthy people, generation after generation. They raised healthy children, and so they just kind of learned what to use in their natural bread basket. And And so you don't need superfoods. You don't need foods from far off destinations. There isn't some magic bullet, some magic supplement that's just going to like make you, healthy. It's just like eat real food, eat local, fresh, real food, obviously we live in like a global community now, so we have access to all these things. But yeah, it really like opened my mind to see like there isn't some like perfect diet. It's just like use the foods that are in your environment, um, and learn how to use them well. You know, I think what there's a lot of factors that made humans kind of travel the world, but one of them I think was just like exploration for new foods. Like I live to eat for sure. Like I love every meal. I look forward to eating really good food. And if you're like living in the same environment for thousands of years and you have literally the same freaking foods every freaking day, like you kind of can get bored of it. So being able to go and bring back new spices or bring back new foods and bring back new animals, like to kind of change the palate, like that seemed pretty exciting. And I mean, these people were willing to trade their best things, all their furs, all their gems, all their beads, all their artistry.
For one onion bulb.
Or yeah, for an onion or for a piece of cake. Like that's essentially what it was. That was the first like processed crack food that was being sold, was like, oh, give us all your goods and we'll give you flour and sugar and you can make the best bite of food you've had in your entire life. And everyone went like, okay, I'll give you it all, I'll give you everything. And so to this day, I mean, I talk to a lot of friends and the hardest thing for them to give up is sugar. That everyone is majorly addicted to sugar. And I guess it has the same effect as cocaine does as far as pleasure goes in the brain. It makes you just feel good.
They used to call it speed.
Oh yeah. So
we stayed at the biggest sugar plantation in South America.
Oh yeah, San Gabriel, Cortez. So after reading, I watched a documentary a few weeks ago about the Aztec Empire, and it's really, I mean, you study one empire, you kind of understand the pattern in which all empires function off of, like continuous expansion, need for more tributes, need for more like taxes, essentially, to continue your war escapades. Until people get so disgruntled with the quality of living that they're currently living that they just get over it. It's like, hey, you guys in power are like not taking care of us like you said you were going to, and our schools are collapsing, and you guys want more taxes, but like, what are we getting out of it? You guys are just spending it on war. Like, we're over it. So that's essentially what's happening in the U.S. as well. But so when Cortez showed up, that people were already just so disgruntled with what was happening that he kind of offered like, hey, like, let's change it up a little bit. And they housed him in Texcoco, which is like on the other side of the lake, when Mexico City actually was like a lake. And I think that's where I think maybe it's where I didn't look it up on a map, but like I think that's where Cuernavaca is.
It's 60 miles
south. Okay, I think this was north. Texcoco was north. But yeah, that was probably one of the coolest places I've got to stay in. Historic.
You could feel it.
Yeah.
That was also where Emiliano Zapata and what's his name had their Mexican Revolution.
Yeah, they're like
headquarters, Pancho Villa.
Yeah. There's a really cool documentary about what's happening with the Zapatista movement. And it's quite eye-opening as far as like how to really start a movement and create this iconic imagery and create this idealism for a better world, and get people behind it. So I want to dive into like digestion and continue these health talks. Like it would be really cool if you could like give information, if you could just like take us through like the digestive tract, like from not exactly what to eat, why to eat, how to eat it, but like what is going on internally, so people can kind of like understand like what are the properties, what are the functions of the digestive tract, so that they could kind of feel what's going on. I I think that would be really educational and interesting.
So it's fairly simple.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, the digestive tract, of course, starts with the mouth.
So
And
what happens there?
it's mechanical digestion,
Okay.
chewing.
Okay.
Incredibly important and probably neglected with most people. To relax while you eat and chew your food thoroughly would probably help 50% of people's health problems.
That's crazy.
Just to,
I've recommended that to somebody and they noticed their bowel movements change drastically, like just by slowing down and masticating their food to the point where it was mush, you know, eating it, chewing it, then actually not swallowing it, but just re-chewing it again and just really breaking it down.
chewing it, you know, it's interesting. It actually also kills bugs.
Oh, wow.
So
Like what?
that's part of our immune defense is chewing stuff. It actually kills bugs.
Do you know how that
And
works, or is it?
well, it just breaks down the cell walls, kills them.
What kind of bugs?
Bacteria,
Like
viruses,
pathogens?
fungus, you know,
Really?
parasites. So that's part of our immune defense is just the mechanics of it.
Wow.
And then interestingly enough, you don't need to chew meat to digest it. So meat can be swallowed whole, just like a dog or a lion, you know,
Yeah.
and just swallows it. Well, we can chew, or we don't have to chew our meat, but we do need to chew our carbohydrates, which are grains, beans, fruits, berries, and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
Because the salivary glands in our jaw and underneath our mouth,
Mm-hmm.
they secrete an enzyme which, you know, that helps to not only lubricate the food, but also to start the digestion of carbohydrates. And our digestive tract, we secrete, I think it's like 5 to 7 liters of fluid a day.
We secrete 5 to 7 liters of fluid into our digestive tract.
In our digestive tract.
Really?
And that includes like even the bile. You know, our liver produces about 2 liters of bile a day, which then goes to our gallbladder and is concentrated. But you know, our digestive enzymes, you know, the mucus, the saliva, you know, it's a huge amount of fluids that keep and lubricate our alimentary canal, which is another name for the digestive tract. So from our mouth, alimentary, ALIMENTARY.
Do you know what that means?
Mm-mm.
No, alimentary.
Elementary. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you know, and of course, so the start of our digestion is mechanical, and then also our esophagus is a muscle. So once we swallow, it doesn't just, you know, drop down into our stomach.
What do you mean? In space, they have they can swallow food?
Yeah. So the esophagus kind of squeezes it down, and it squeezes it through the cardiac sphincter into our stomach. And then guess what? Our stomach is a muscle.
Yeah. So the stomach is kind of the first place that the second place that a lot of, you know, real interesting things are happening.
Well, primarily it's digestion of proteins.
That's where the hydrochloric acid.
Yeah, it secretes hydrochloric acid and pepsin, and also a precursor to a B vitamin. That's about all the stomach does.
Really? Those three? What is it? Say it again.
Pepsin, hydrochloric acid, and a precursor to a B12 vitamin.
Wow.
So, you know, it's mechanical. So once, and that the acid, hydrochloric acid, you know, really lowers the pH of our stomach, you know, to make it very, very acidic, which also kills bugs.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we have mechanically chewing, which kills bugs, because in our food and in our water, we're swallowing bugs.
It's covered in bacteria and fungus.
And of course, we have more bugs in us than we have human cells.
Yeah.
So it's dropping into an intestinal tract, you know, which has 100,000 billion bugs. And the genetic material is like, there's about 3 million genes in all those bugs, and the human only has about 28,000.
Okay.
So it's really, really phenomenal. And then
Diverse.
our skin has, I think, 100 billion bugs right underneath our epidermis.
So
So
germaphobes are just completely, they've lost it.
and yeah, and the bugs line our cardiovascular system, our veins and our arteries, our genital urinary tract.
It's
Is
kind of
covered with
the
bugs.
it's kind of the living skin to protect us, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they create this layer to protect us from other bugs. Like it's a complete necessary.
Yeah, it's like if you have a
Life.
grass lawn that has really healthy grass, weeds won't grow.
Right. Nice.
If
Yeah.
you, and so if you have healthy bugs, then you don't get infections. And indeed, our gastrointestinal tract could be considered a skin. I've never said that before,
Yeah.
but it's kind of a skin as well. The cells in the small intestine are only one cell deep,
Wow.
and in the large intestine, I think they're like 3 or 4 cells deep. But in the large intestine, you can have up to 200 layers of bacteria.
Really?
Which you asked a few weeks ago what the mucoid plaque was and what a bioskin is.
Yeah.
You know, what people mistakenly believe is mucoid plaque in the small intestine is actually a skin of bifidobacteria, which kind of protects the or the large intestine. So
Yeah.
when you remove it with the colonic, you're not really doing yourself any favors.
Right. I've heard that a
And
lot.
you see this stuff come out in a colonic, and people think, oh my gosh, I'm getting rid of all this junk. No, man, you're stripping
You're stripping your protection,
the mucosal lining of your large intestine.
which is going to lead to health problems later, right? I mean,
Yeah,
once you
it
strip your
could.
barrier, then the bad
It
bugs
could.
will colonize before the good bugs ever will. I mean, they're more. It's like the weed trees versus the old growth trees. They're there first.
Yeah.
Wow.
So so then remember that your stomach is a muscle. It's churning, and then your small intestine is a muscle, and it's churning.
Mm.
So our whole digestive tract is actually musculature, which helps in the mechanical digestion. The basic idea is you got to ingest food, you got to break it down, you got to absorb it, and then you've got to get rid of the waste.
So first and foremost, being hydrated is probably number one. If you're
Yeah,
not hydrated, then so many things are not going to function properly, right?
well, and hydration has a whole lot more to do than with how much water you drink.
It has to do with minerals, but
Yeah, and it has to do with your kidneys, and it has to do with your adrenals. So that's the main thing, Stuart. I think that I've learned in dealing with health all these years is that every condition is a composite of dozens of contributions. So when you think that, I have heartburn, and so what do? You take an antacid. Well, gee, think about that one. Your stomach produces acid. So do you suppose acid is a problem? It is if you've got a problem, but acid is not the problem. Cholesterol, your liver makes almost all of your cholesterol. Only 10-15% of your cholesterol comes from your diet. It's made by cells in your liver. And so if you have high cholesterol, how smart is it to kill the cells in the liver that make it, which is the number one prescription drug sold these days is, statin drugs.
Well, that's the difference between a holistic approach, meaning accounting for everything, and a medical approach, which is, you got this, we're going to fight this thing.
Well, and it's often also ingrained in us so much that our alternative medicine is also like sort of like, take this superfood.
Whenever I talk to people about health, it's always like, are you into this thing? Like, are you into mushrooms? Are you into like this superfood? Or do you take this thing? And it's like, no. And again, it's with that Western Price foundation, meaning you don't need anything special. It's just how you take care of yourself on a daily basis.
And you have to look at a comprehensive view. You can't compartmentalize and say, my immune system, or my detox system, or my digestion, or my mental, or my emotional,
they're all
or
connected.
my physical. It's you have to be a conductor. You know, you have to be looking at it all. So, you know, back to digestion. You know, the hydrochloric acid is produced by the stomach and pepsin, and it helps to break down the proteins. And all of the macronutrients that we eat, which is protein, fats, and carbs, those are the three kind of categories of food that we eat. It's a protein, it's a fat, or it's carb. And then the micronutrients are enzymes, water, vitamins, and minerals. And that's what we eat. Macronutrients and micronutrients.
Cool.
And the macronutrients are composites. Like protein is made of amino acids, and carbohydrates are made of saccharides, monosaccharides, and fats are made of fatty acids. And when the food itself is a composite of those, and in order for it to be digested into our body, those macronutrients have to be broken down to their smallest particles. So protein, in order for it to pass the small intestinal wall, it has to be amino acids. And then those amino acids have to be built back up into proteins. But protein, we don't eat a steak and then have that turn into muscle. That steak has to be broken down completely into the amino acids, or it won't pass through the filter. So when you get to the small intestine, and the first part of the small intestine is called the duodenum, and that's the first foot of small intestine, right after the stomach. So you chew food, you salivate it. That begins the digestion of carbohydrates.
First enzyme.
And then it goes into your stomach, but the acid, when you start producing acid in your stomach, that actually deactivates the enzymatic action of the salivary glands.
Okay.
So we don't really digest carbohydrates in the stomach, although we digest it when we chew it. That's why chewing carbohydrates
is so crucial.
So important.
You look at animals that are chewing.
You can swallow protein, but carbohydrates have to be chewed up, because those carbohydrates, if they're not broken down, then and once it goes into the stomach, then the other pancreas, then the pancreas. So you got two more glands in the system. You've got the salivary glands, then you've got the pancreas, which sits below your stomach, sort of a greenish organ that's really hard to even see when you do dissection. And then you've got the liver, and the liver produces bile, which is stored and concentrated in your gallbladder. And so your gallbladder has a duct that leads into the duodenum. Your pancreas has a duct that leads into the duodenum. So after you've swallowed your food, it goes into your stomach. It takes a couple hours, 2 to 6 hours or so for the contents of your stomach to be released. And if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, that screws everything else, because what is coming out of the stomach is very acidic. And if it's not very acidic, it confuses the body, because the bile produced by the gallbladder, which is actually produced by the liver, and the pancreatic enzymes are very alkaline. And so their purpose is to take the acidic contents of the stomach and to alkalize it, so that by the time it goes into the jejunum, the first part of your small intestine, it's alkaline. And if your small intestine is not alkaline, it really affects everything. So you have to go from the acid, from actually the pH of your mouth, which is not too acidic, it becomes acidified. Then and if there's not a lot of acid in the stomach, it then doesn't stimulate the pancreatic and bile digestive enzymes like it should. So therefore, you don't alkalize that acidic contents of the stomach. It goes into your small intestine, and then you're acidic.
Super acidic.
And don't even get me started talking about alkaline water.
Let's not do it. But I did learn something recently about hydrogen, how it like breaks down the water molecules with hydrogen and makes fraction whatever, like fraxel, whatever the word I'm looking for. And it makes it more absorbable. That was one thing that I was like, okay, maybe.
Well, hydrolysis, that's we have to, our liver goes through two different stages. First, it makes the toxins water soluble, and then it makes them, then there's an acidic process. So, there's all these different steps.
Yeah. So let's not talk about water, but like, or at least let's talk about mineralized water, but let's not talk about Kangen water. But how would the body not be producing enough hydrochloric acid? Like, what are the factors why it would be
Stress.
Wow.
Hydrochloric acid, if it's anywhere other than the stomach, will eat you up.
Right. It's the gnarliest thing that the body does, right? Is making this hydrochloric acid.
It's tough for a living biological system to make acid.
Yeah.
So when you're under stress, the first thing that your body stops is the production of acid.
Interesting.
Because when you're under stress, your body is saying, okay, man, I got to deal with this problem here.
Don't eat.
And all of the non-essential activities, I have to stop. And the first thing that it stops is our acid production. Wow. So that's why when you're stressed out, it's not a real good idea to eat.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing that affects the production of hydrochloric acid is malnourishment. So if your body is malnourished, it's again, it affects your ability to make the hydrochloric acid. When I do a blood chemistry, I look at about a dozen different chemistries to determine if somebody's making enough hydrochloric acid. Okay. Because one of the cardinal mistakes that you can make is that if you take hydrochloric acid because your stomach is upset, and if you're producing hydrochloric acid already, and you don't really know if you need it or not, that's why a lot of people take apple cider vinegar. It's sort of a way to determine if you are producing hydrochloric acid. If you can take some apple cider vinegar after you eat or while you're eating, and it helps your digestion, then it's a sign that maybe you're deficient in hydrochloric acid. Whereas if you take the apple cider vinegar and it gives you heartburn, then it means that you don't need more hydrochloric acid. But you have to look at protein levels, calcium levels, blood urea nitrogen levels, uric acid levels, alkaline phosphatase. You look at a lot of different measures in the chemistries to say, yeah, you do need hydrochloric acid. Because if you give the hydrochloric acid to somebody and they don't need it, it'll shut down their stomach's production of hydrochloric acid. It's like if you have a hormone deficiency and you take a hormone, it'll shut down your body's natural production of hormones. So it's generally not the best first step to take a hormone. Even if you're deficient, you want to try to help the body make its own hormones, because if you take a synthetic or a natural bioidentical hormone, and it will shut down your body's own production because of the feed forward and feedback loops. Right. Same thing with the pancreatic enzyme. You don't want to. So a lot of times when people have digestive problems, the first thing that a health food store will tell you is to take some digestive enzymes. Well, unless you really know that you're deficient in those digestive enzymes, it can be deleterious to your overall long-term health to take them. Might make you feel better, but then you're dependent upon that versus figuring out, well, why is my body not making the hydrochloric acid, or why is my pancreas not making pancreatic enzymes? And then you look at the bile. So if you're, and this is very, very common to have hydrochloric acid deficiency, pancreatic enzyme deficiency.
Would you say most people who develop a disease, this is one
part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it leads to malnourishment and toxicity.
Right.
So the bile, again, the liver makes bile, and it uses bile as a means to get rid of toxins. So the liver does about 200 different things. It breaks down red blood cells. It breaks down hormones. It breaks down your food.
It's like the chemical producer. Is that what it does? I mean,
it's a filter.
It's a filter.
It's a filter, but it needs to have different compounds to combine with the byproducts of digestion and with the toxins in the body in order to it's a detox organ. And in order to get those toxins out of the body, it puts them into bile. And so and then the bile, which is very liquidy as made by the liver, it goes to the gallbladder where it's concentrated and it's made more into like a gel or a cream. And then
what concentration is it from liver to gallbladder? Like,
well, the bile in the liver is liquid. The bile in the gallbladder is more creamy or gel-like. So it concentrates the bile. But in that bile are all these toxins, because that's what the bile's purpose is for the liver. So the liver breaks down toxins by making them water soluble and then fat soluble. That's phase 1 and phase 2 of liver detoxification. Then it goes into the gallbladder where it's concentrated. And what's really cool is that then when you eat carbohydrate and fat and protein, the fat is not digested by the saliva. The fat is not digested by the acid in your stomach, but the pancreatic enzymes do start to break down the fat. And then the fat passes by the bile duct. And when fat is detected around that bile duct, it causes the gallbladder to squeeze out the bile.
And that's in the duodenum?
Yeah, in the first foot before it gets into the small intestine. The bile is also alkalizing as the pancreatic enzyme. So you're alkalizing the bolus coming from the stomach, which is very acidic, in order to go into the small intestine where the optimal digestion is in an alkaline environment. But the bile acts like a detergent, like Tide detergent on a fat stream.
Yeah.
So it starts to emulsify the fats that you've eaten, and it alkalizes it. But that's what stimulates the contraction of the gallbladder, is eating good fat. And so then after the pancreatic enzymes are dropped into the duodenum and the bile is squeezed out into the duodenum, then it finally hits the small intestine.
And that's where some real magic happens, no?
Yeah, there's some absorption of nutrients in the duodenum, I believe,
Oh, yeah?
but primarily it happens in the small intestine.
And that's where the bacteria, that's where the enzymes, that's all like, so that's kind of, so all those pre-steps, right? I mean, all those steps kind of like get things ready for the 25 feet of the small intestine.
Yeah, the 20 feet or so of the small intestine. You've got an upper part of the small intestine, the jejunum. You've got the ileum, which is the lower part of the small intestine. And in the small intestine, you have these little villi, which are big enough to see with your naked eye. They're about 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters long. And the villi, instead of it being a smooth tube, the villi increase the surface area for absorption tenfold. So if you have your fingers closed, from here to here is like 2 inches. If you have your fingers like this and you've got all this, you got 10 or 20 inches.
Right.
So even though the small intestine should just be like about 1 inch in diameter and about 20 feet long, it has the surface area of a tennis court.
Wow.
And the villi have on top, and the villi have blood vessels in them. And they also have a lymphatic system called a lacteal. And the lacteal goes down the middle of each of the villi. And at the very end of the villi, that's where it absorbs fat. So that's ideal. And then also in those villi and in the small intestine, you have lymphatic tissue, just like you have lymph nodes in your groin and in your armpit and in your neck. Well, there's sort of like, it's kind of like lymph nodes, but the lymph nodes in the small intestine are called the Peyer's patches, and their job is to identify anything that is foreign. So bugs, if you've eaten bugs, or you've eaten parasites or in your food, or you got fungus in your food, then when that gets into the small intestine, those bugs cause the immune system to start to produce antibodies. Anything that's foreign to the body is called an antigen. And an antigen, by definition, is a foreign protein that stimulates an antibody. And bugs, foods, and toxins will stimulate antibodies. You got 2 parts of the immune system. You got antibodies, which are to get rid of foreigners that invade you. And then you've got white blood cells. Okay, two distinct parts of your immune system.
So you're getting into the immune system. So what I'm understanding is like the immune system lies within the small intestine. This is your defense.
In Peyer's patches. And the small intestine is a semi-permeable membrane. You know, like what are those water filters that are semi-permeable water filters?
I don't know. I know that they use volcanic rock to filter water because it's permeable.
Yeah, it's
water filter that.
Right now, it's the best water filter there is, and it's a semi-permeable membrane. It's how they make salt water into fresh water.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
You just yeah.
I read that you can use the xylem of the root, like or of a branch. You can literally like pass
filter
water through a stem.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. But the coolest water filtration I've seen was at this monastery in Argentina. And it was like this huge volcanic rock on a wooden stand. And they would just fill it up and the water would just trickle through. And I was like, that. And I assume maybe it's mineralizing it at the same time, but I'm not sure.
Well, so your intestine is a semi-permeable membrane. It allows certain things into your body, and it filters stuff that shouldn't get into your body, right? And as we discussed earlier, those digestive enzymes and the mechanics of your chewing and the mechanics of your small intestine churning, your stomach churning, all that breaks down those foods into these tiny little particles, which have to be broken down. Like sugar is a disaccharide. It's two molecules of a monosaccharide. There's actually an enzyme produced in the small intestine called sucrase. And that sucrase has to break down the white table sugar into a monosaccharide before it passes through the intestinal wall into your body.
Okay.
And and where those enzymes are made are on the surface of the villi.
Okay.
So you got these little villi. They're absorbing through the semi-permeable membrane the amino acids, the fatty acids, the monosaccharides. They're filtering out the bad bugs, goes into your lymph system.
So back to the immune system, like if it detects a bug in the digestive tract at that point, now antibodies will start being produced to kind of capture that
and you have the biggest collection or the biggest source of antibodies is in your mucus, because that's where mucus lines all of our openings to the external world. So our respiratory tract, our alimentary tract, our genitourinary tract, there's mucus. So 90% of the antibodies produced in the body, like we talked about the 7 liters of liquid, well, you're producing antibodies in your mucus. And it's called secretory IgA, immunoglobulin. That's another name for an antibody. So SIG-A is produced in your mucus tissue, and it's where we detect anything that's foreign. And the neatest darn thing is that the antibody attracts the foreigner to it and locks it up with handcuffs. And then that is then now called an immune complex. So the antibody with the antigen is either an antigen-antibody complex or an immune complex, but it's locked up the foreigner, a food, bug, or a toxin. That then goes and is filtered through to your kidneys, where it's passed out the body through urine. And that's how we get rid of these foreigners. One of the most important things that I ever learned, the most important thing I ever learned in my life was when Vojani told me that he says, look, Chuck, he's an immunologist and he's an environmental immunologist. So he studies toxins and how the immune system deals with toxins. And he said, of all the toxins that the human being has to deal with, if we're producing antibodies against our food, that's the biggest toxic load there is. And I'll never forget the moment he told me that.
Lightning bolt goes
off.
Because
I realized that is the most important thing I've ever learned in my life. And he developed a test looking for antibodies against food, which is a food sensitivity, as opposed to a food allergy or a food intolerance.
Right.
And the big thing about that is that our bodies our biggest interaction with the external world is what we put in our mouth. It's about a pound or a pound and a half of food a day. And the water. Well, food, bugs, and toxins, if they're getting into our mouth. What's in our mouth and what's in our alimentary canal, what's in our small intestine is outside of our body, Stuart. That whole canal from our mouth to our anus is not in our body. It's only if it's absorbed through the intestinal wall that it gets into our body. And that's that filter mechanism. Because we gotta filter out the bad stuff. And but because the biggest exposure we have to the external world is what we put in our mouth, that's called an antigen load. And what you look at is antigen penetration. So antigen load reduction therapy is what I do.
Yeah.
That's the name of the medicine that I do, antigen load reduction therapy. And you look at antigen penetration. So if you get a big wound on your arm and it gets infected, you got a lot of infectious bugs getting into your body. You know, so if your body is attacking your food, that's the reason he said this was the biggest toxin that the body has to deal with, is because it's the most ubiquitous. If we're attacking our food, yeah, and this is why you shouldn't eat the same food every day.
Right.
If you eat food only once every 4 days, then food is generally absorbed into your body in somewhere around 24 hours, 20 to 40 hours. Generally 55 hours plus or minus 15. So anywhere from 25 hours to 70 hours is how long food stays in you. If you wait 4 days, there's going to be at least 1 day where that food is not in you and it's not being attacked by the immune system, creating those immune complexes. Because if too many immune complexes are created, the kidneys can't filter them, and they recirculate back into your body, where then they're attacked by the white blood cells, which is your cellular immunity. Humoral immunity is your antibodies. Cellular immunity is the white blood cells. And there's a hormone that identifies those toxins to the white blood cells, and then through a process of cellular drinking or engulfing, it's pinocytosis or phagocytosis. White blood cells find a toxin and they either poke a straw into it and attack it that way, or they just eat it up. And if in that process, it causes a lot of inflammation. And if we have a lot of inflammation inside of us, that inflammation damages our tissue. And it could be muscle tissue, it could be nerve tissue, it could be glandular tissue, it could be organ tissue, it could be the tissue of our arteries and our veins. And all that inflammation is what leads to atherosclerosis, it leads to autoimmunity, it leads to cancer, it leads to these degenerative diseases is inflammation. So,
and that's largely from reacting to foods.
And bugs.
And bugs
so
and toxins.
Bugs in their cell walls, they have what are called endotoxins. And if the endotoxins are allowed into the body, then that's what the lymph system is also looking out for. But here's what overwhelms that whole system, that filtration, which is this, again, semi-permeable membrane. Lets some stuff in, keeps some stuff out, which then is passed out through the rectum and into the toilet. If there's too much antigen penetration, then the body is overwhelmed and inflammation is the result. What happens is that the tight junctions of the villi, so you've got all these cells which allow the absorption of what has been broken down into the body. What hasn't been broken down passes out through the large intestine. But if the small intestine is inflamed from eating processed foods,
which it is for 99% of everyone on the planet,
antibiotics, toxins,
Yeah.
fungus,
So
bacteria, parasites.
if it's inflamed,
Then,
then
then,
that doesn't
then
work.
those tight junctions leak, and it allows stuff that should have been filtered out and gone out through the toilet. It allows it into the body before it's being digested. So that's why we attack food, is the food hasn't been digested yet because the intestinal wall is leaking, and it allows that undigested food into the abdomen, where then it's absorbed by the capillaries and by the lymph system into the blood. And then antibodies in the blood are produced as opposed to the antibodies in the mucus. And remember, 90% of the antibodies produced in the body are in the mucus, but 10% of the antibodies are reserved for anything that gets through the castle walls, through our walls, our moats, and gets into the inner sanctum where we're supposed to be sterile. So then these antibodies are produced against, and you can produce thousands of different antibodies depending upon what the foreigner is.
Uh-huh.
So you'll produce a specific antibody for broccoli, a specific antibody for garlic, a specific antibody for chicken, all the different foods that we eat, and for different toxins. You're producing antibodies against the toxins, and you're producing antibodies against the bugs. So you got all these bugs in your gut. If those cell walls are the tight junctions, it's called, if they leak, then bugs that shouldn't be getting into our body get in through that. Toxins get in, and foods. So
this is the story of the modern food epidemic, essentially. I mean, the modern food epidemic creates all this inflammation in the small intestine. Our bodies are not evolutionary geared for fighting all this stuff to get passed through. So we're overwhelmed, and that's what all these diseases are.
Yeah. Biggest problem is the chemicals used in our food.
Right. That's what creates all that.
Why do we use toxic chemicals to grow our food with, man?
Because if it works to deforest Vietnam, it's going to work to deforest our farms.
So, Roundup is used on wheat.
Right.
And when people eat wheat, they're getting Roundup.
So that causes
remember when you were going to college and studying botany?
Yeah.
And Jean, your professor Jean, and you had these epic arguments about Roundup, and she said, Roundup doesn't kill human cells, it just kills bugs. Well, it kills the bugs inside of us.
Yeah.
And so that's a big reason why we've got gluten sensitivity and different food intolerances, lactose intolerance, soy intolerance, sugar intolerance, egg intolerance, and gluten intolerance. And that is a process where an antibody is attacking that undigested food on the intestinal wall, which leads to leaky gut. Right? So that's a food intolerance. And then a food sensitivity is once that food, bug, or toxin leaked through the body and got inside of us, then we're producing antibodies against that. And because if there's too many, our body can handle so many invaders, but if we're
but 90% is on the wall, only 10% is inside. So once it becomes inside of us, we're not as geared to handle that, because that's not supposed to be happening.
No, you're right. And then the white blood cells get involved, and then that's the complement cascade. And so this really is the key to cancer, to autoimmunity. This also affects our insulin resistance.
I mean, it affects everything.
So diabetes is because of leaky gut.
Yeah.
The brain. So if your gut is leaking, there's a barrier that your brain has to keep toxins circulating in your blood, getting into your brain. But if your gut is leaking, your brain starts leaking, so there's mental illness.
And everyone is affected by this. I mean, not like anyone who's eating the modern diet, this is what's happening.
Yeah. If you're eating junk food, if you've taken antibiotics, if your food has hormones in it and pesticides in it, if you're exposed to an external world, where you're breathing, these big particles in the air from burning of fossil fuels, we're just getting holes in our defense mechanism, man. and all
Wow.
these toxins are leaking in.
Right.
We're supposed to be like a castle, where
Right.
inside the castle you've got a moat,
Well,
you
in the
got a
last 100
bridge,
years, we've
you
created
got a castle
so
wall, you've
many.
got soldiers on the castle wall, and if the invaders break down all those mechanisms and get inside, then that's kind of what's causing our illnesses today, is that, you know, our defensive walls are breaking down because of the toxins in our world, and because of antibiotics, and because of, you know, the phytochemicals, the hormones, the exogenous hormones that are being put into our food, or that we go to the medical doctors and we take these toxins, which they call prescriptions. And these days, I mean, when I was a kid, Stuart, they were telling you that it doesn't matter what you eat. Your diet has nothing to do with heart disease. Your diet has nothing to do with cancer. I'd scratch my head and I'd say, tell me another one. You know, I mean, really? You really believe that? Now they're believing it. Now they're starting to recognize, you know, that that the food and what we ingest affects our health. But they're still giving us, you know, these
Pendulum
horrible
swings.
toxins that, when you look at detoxifying a human being and what their antigen load is, you know, you look for a food bug or a toxin. What's bugging the body? If you're not asking the patient, what prescription drugs are you taking, then you're missing a big percentage of the toxic load that's making that person sick. I did a seminar this last year with a really great environmental toxicologist. And I said, what's the most common toxin that we're exposed to? And he said, the glue in the carpet
Wow.
and paints.
That's messed up.
So young couples
Houses.
have babies,
In brand
and
new houses.
and they put new carpet in the baby room,
New carpet.
and they paint the baby room, and then
And
they give the
just
baby plastic cribs and plastic toys and plastic pacifiers. But
setting us
I mean,
up.
I was pretty shocked when we got moved into our new house. I searched out 100% wool carpet and 100% wool padding, and, you know, because the padding that is underneath carpet, oh my gosh, it's
What's it
really
called?
toxic.
Like new home toxic syndrome or something? What's it
Yeah,
called?
yeah, and then the glue that they use on carpet. And I wouldn't let the guys use glue. We put in instead of that spongy carpet that's made of recycled plastic bottles and stuff like that, we had felt.
A felt wool
And,
mat. Yeah.
and it turns out that, you know, a whole 100% wool carpet resists stains. It's kind of like hair. So, you know, you get a stain, wash your hair.
Wash it out.
But guess
With
what?
the plastic.
Guess what synthetic carpets have?
A
Stain
guard.
stain guard.
So the carpet is plastic, and then they put more chemicals on that, and it's just
And then
off-gassing.
they use plastic glue, and they use plastic tape, and they use a plastic padding.
God, oil. Oil is gonna kill us all. It's
It
what
is.
everything is made out of. It's
Yeah.
how we've expanded
Fertilizers, synthetic
Yeah.
fertilizers.
I mean, it's this
Drugs.
compound,
How about
right?
that? The prescription drugs are
Are
made
made out
from
of oil.
oil.
Yeah. Because it's this compound, it's this carbon that it just has all these things that you can then break it apart and chemically change it. I mean,
There's 60,000 new substances on the planet, maybe more.
60,000
And
that didn't exist 100 years
that
ago.
didn't exist 150
And the
years
body
ago.
has no idea how to deal with it.
Well, you know what helps it deal with it is all the bacteria in our gut.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the reason why they use mice for experimentation is that mice reproduce so quickly.
Mm.
Well, our human body, we're kind of slow to change in relationship to our environment. We change.
We do.
You know,
Yeah.
we evolve. But
Yeah.
what helps the human evolve is the bacteria in our gut.
Is the response, the environmental response, that the bacteria?
Yeah, the bugs mutate in response to all these chemicals,
Yeah.
and they mutate real quickly.
The
And
bugs,
so,
yeah,
and
the bugs
so
do.
then they, and I said, there's
And they
only
trigger us.
28,000 human genes, but
Wow.
there's 3 million genes from the bugs in our gut. And there's 10 times more bugs in us than there are human cells. And those tiny little bugs, their mutations and adaptations to our changing toxic world help us to modify ourselves to deal with the toxins.
Is it going to be fast enough? Like, I mean,
No,
obviously it's not. I mean,
good question.
most everyone is
That was
suffering, but
that was
like,
the
will
right.
we evolve to coexist with plastic someday?
No,
Will there be a,
we don't have time.
no,
We're getting so inundated that
with
it's not
so many
even.
new things, 60,000 new compounds. That's insane. And and we're covering ourselves in it. We put it on our skin. We fill our homes with it. It's in our cars. You buy a new car, you're getting that nice new car formaldehyde smell. I mean, it's everywhere. And then it's in our food. We're putting these chemicals,
It's
we're
it's
ingesting
in
them.
it's in breast milk.
Yeah.
There's over 200, well over 200 chemicals
Is it
in
possible? I
breast
mean,
milk.
obviously it is. We're talking about like helping people heal, but like, is it possible to like heal yourself is your body that resilient to the point where like you can heal from 20 years, like in my case, like 20 years of environmental damage of existing in the modern world? Can you heal yourself to the point where you can attain like,
Well, let me ask you a question. Did
yeah,
you ever live in Tijuana and work in a clinic with stage 4 cancer patients
yeah,
that had had chemo and radiation and surgery and had cancer for years and years and years and were dying?
yeah,
Did you see those people get better?
yeah.
Well, if those people can get better, anybody can get better.
Okay, so everyone can get better, but like to the point where you can just feel like fucking amazing, like so you're not bombarded. You don't have to deal with the symptoms of the
It
modern.
depends on how, it's kind of like you're in a river, how far in there's a waterfall a mile away.
How close are you
And
to the waterfall?
how
Can you
close,
get out?
yeah.
Yeah.
So the sooner you get out, the better.
Okay, that makes a lot of good sense.
The further you go towards that, and it has to do with aging too. I mean, Dr. Borkin was in Russia doing a lot of research and anti-aging. And they said, once you get past, I think it was 65,
And then
kind
you're
of
kind
hate
of
saying
stuck.
that because I'm 68,
Yeah.
but it was anywhere from 65 to 70 or 75. He said, once you get to that age,
You can't get out of
then
the
you
river.
don't heal as well. But last year, I had a man who was 90 with leukemia who didn't want to do chemo and who asked to work with me. And I did all my testing. And then we repeated the testing in 3 months. And out of the 75 chemistries that we ran, 25 of them changed in those 3 months. And 3 out of 4 of them got better. The other one got maybe a little bit worse or pretty much stayed the same, but 75% improvement. And then, I wasn't up here for the last 6 months, so I've been gone. And I went into the bike store the other day, and his son's working there. And he says, Dad's doing great. His
Wow.
chemistries are getting better and better. He kind of quit working with me. He got tired of swallowing pills, and I had to restrict his diet. He couldn't eat the foods that he was eating. And I had him taking about 15 different nutrients for a while, and he was gagging him down. But in 3 months, we saw incredible progress. And now, a year and a half later, he was ready to die. And and now people around town say, geez, I saw Bud and Barbara at the post office, and Bud got out to get the mail. Barbara's sitting in the car.
That's so cool.
It's like he's really doing a lot better. And
That's
his son
amazing.
said, Dad's out riding. He's doing really, really well.
That's resilience.
So if we can see a 90-year-old, and there's varying stages of leukemia, and his blood cells, he'd been watching his white blood cells go up for 20 years when I started working with him.
Yeah.
So, we did great. But, those people that we saw in Tijuana,
Yeah.
they were goners. And so I think it's never too late.
I have this vision or dream of like having a retirement facility and people go there because they can't take care of themselves, and we do this work of healing them through the digestion, and then they get to like leave, like they like get their energy back.
That's
And they
been
like,
one of my visions too. I wish that I could go into a retirement home and feed half the people and do a double-blind study and do the testing, do the food sensitivity, do a blood chemistry,
Yeah.
maybe do a hormone test.
and just watch them just,
and then change their diet and also change their exercise and also meditation, yoga, and learning how to forgive.
Because stress, if you have stress, you're not functioning properly.
I think that every disease is associated with a bad thought.
Emotional, yeah, big time.
So if we harbor
hatred,
ill will
anger,
towards ourselves, because we judge ourselves more harshly than we even judge other people. But if I'm not good enough, I'm not this enough. I watched Ram Dass, by the way.
Cool. Isn't he brilliant? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And there was a woman that came walking down the street yesterday. She's 40. She's getting a degree in counseling. And we talked. And she said, the only reason I'm doing this is so I've got a certificate. Because, I said, hey, I do Christian Science. And I'm, transcendental, Ralph Waldo Emerson, And she said, I'm on board with all that. The counseling techniques I'm not too excited about, but I want a degree. But she has a problem with fertility. And she said, just today I was thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to just give up having a baby? Because I really want a baby. But all the doctors I've gone to, they say, oh, well, this is kind of messed up. I've never seen that before. And I just did I did 2 hormone seminars in the last 2 weeks, one on men and one on cycling women that are still, having their cycles, their periods. And then there's menopausal women. And actually next week I'm doing a seminar on estrogen with, one of the best estrogen specialists in the whole world. But the one that I saw on cycling, of course, that's what I did 20 years ago when I worked at a hormone lab and consulted and taught doctors how to do hormone testing. Well, it's evolved a lot in 20 years. But what was exciting about this seminar this week was that it's nitty gritty, it's complicated, it's not for the weak of mind. It's you got to really be on the ball. And I was able to, because I've been studying it for 20 years, it wasn't like a foreign language to me. And I was able to, even though there was new stuff that was being presented,
you have enough terminology to kind of like, oh, I know.
I could track it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned a lot. And
that's cool.
So I'm excited about that. But the thing is that if I can add to what they teach me with everything else that I've learned about immunology and about fatty acids.
Well, you're just perfecting, the craft of like helping the human body heal itself.
Yeah. And not the least of which is mental and emotional.
Yeah.
Of the clients that I have, I've got a pancreatic cancer patient right now. And a lot of what we talk about is metaphysical healing. And so I'd say that 90% of the clients that I'm working with that have chronic illnesses that have been to so many doctors and not gotten well, it's important to again see the 20 different factors. You can't just deal with your hormones. Right. You can't just heal with an antacid.
You can't go to a specialist and be like,
can't take a superfood. You got to look at the whole.
Turmeric is not the answer for everything.
Yeah. So you look at, Dr. Gundry is now into leaky gut. He was a heart surgeon, a really renowned heart surgeon. And, he's a smart cookie. And he put together a gut formula with about 16 different things, all of which I understand and appreciate, but that's his cure-all.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing food sensitivity testing,
then
if you're not looking at bacterial infections, viral loads, if you're not looking at hormonal imbalances, if you're not looking at food intolerances, food sensitivities, and as well as food allergies, if you're not looking at your mental and emotional, you can't just take a pill that makes you feel better.
Yeah.
That's it's nice. You can take some turmeric and you can take some ginger, but you also have to do the hard work. I I haven't found too many people that are interested in long-term doing that. I've worked with a lot of people over the last 20 years,
Yeah.
and you and Patty are about the only ones that keep going.
Well, I think part of that has to do with having access to the information. I think that, you know, we have these conversations, you know, every week essentially, where we're just getting deeper and deeper. And, you know, like we're all social beings. So who we interact with, what they're into, it all kind of rubs off on one another. And so, if you're not like die hard, you know, like into perfecting your health, um, then you're going to get swayed easily. So
And there's
I've
a
noticed
lot
that.
of lot of misinformation.
Yeah, and it can get confusing. I've noticed it too, like with a lot of friends where they get on the path and they do it for a few months and they feel for the first time relief from all of the poisons that they've been ingesting. And they actually feel like, holy shit, I feel like a different human. And then because it gets too hard, they want to party with their friends. They give up. Like it's too hard of a discipline to continue. And it is for me too. I have those moments where I'm just like, oh God, like every single day I have to cook my food. Every single week I have to like, whereas all my friends are like modern world, can go to the groceries, can go get a pre-made meal there. You know what I mean? Like, um, however, the thing that keeps me on track is this recognition and this realizing that this is how to be a human. Like what people are doing is not working. That's not sustainable. Like how people are living right now, it's not sustainable for having children. Your children are not going to be healthy. So it's not sustainable for human population. It's not sustainable for the planet. You know, eating all these modern mechanized foods is how our planet is being poisoned. So if you're conscientious about healing the planet, like you can't, you know, participate in that any longer.
Well, how do you like being able to think deeply?
Yeah, that's
If remember
it comes and goes,
that
to be honest.
that was probably the
Sometimes
most
I don't like thinking deeply at all, but I love
that
being
was
able to.
that was the profound thing of Tijuana. I mean, we saw
Yeah,
those stage 4 cancer patients get better, but
yeah,
we saw you for the first time go, "Oh my God, somebody turned the lights on,"
yeah.
and we had very
So
deep
much fun. I
conversations every, you know, because we first month or so we didn't have any clients,
Yeah,
so we just made good food. We had an abundance of crazy good food. We
yeah.
read about 8 hours a day,
I've read so much.
and
It was
then
great.
after dinner we'd have these epic
2
conversations
hour just
where
freaking.
you'd say, "Dad, I can think," and I didn't understand it. I really
Yeah,
didn't. What do you mean you can think? I
yeah,
didn't get it, Stuart, when you're telling me that. It wasn't until years later that it sunk in that that was because you cleaned up and you detoxed and you
yeah,
became nourished, your brain clicked in.
yeah,
And now, you know, you're deep, you penetrate, you know, deep, interesting material. And but there's not a lot of people who can think that deeply because
your
they're
nervous system is
malnourished and toxic.
I think your nervous system is literally just getting poisoned. Like you're frying yourself. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, also I think a part of it too was being in such an environment that was cohesive to the human spirit, probably for the first time. You know, like just being in a comforting and nourishing place
Loving.
where loving, exactly. It wasn't like stress. There wasn't any weird tension. There wasn't. It was just like like we can all just exist here and love one another. And
And guess what? That was part of the healing as well.
yeah, big
No
time.
doubt about it. What
And
we fed them
yeah,
right, we gave them the right nutrients, blah
but
blah blah blah
but
blah.
creating an
But
environment. Yeah,
the love. And when I was a chiropractor, part of the good results that I got was that I loved people. No
right.
doubt about it.
Yeah, I
Didn't
mean
matter
it. Yeah.
what bones I cracked. It's the fact that they felt like I cared,
Well,
that I was that I
that's
loved them.
shamanism 101. You know, it's like how do you get someone to recognize themselves? Like you acknowledge.
And I suspect that that's more important than even our diet.
I don't think so. I think there is the spiritual, but there is so much the mechanical as well. And there's a, like for spiritual people, it's like, oh, everything's spiritual, but like, look, we're on this planet right now. There's like real physical things happening here. Like I know
You
that we
don't think
all
the blood of Jesus can protect you from COVID?
like as much as people want to just be breatharians and just like live in the spirit world already, like you are that, but no, you are also like on this physical plane. You are on this earth. There is physics going on, you know, like sorry, but like don't get too out there, you know, like we're not there right now. We're here. So I mean, a lot of my friends are really hyper spiritual and I love it. I get it. Like there's a real necessity to create a beautiful dream for your life and this planet. However, there is also reality and you gotta start with where you're at and where the planet.
I got turned on to Eric Weinstein this week, and
Who's that?
he did a Joe Rogan conversation.
Oh, cool.
He's a physicist. Well, he's not really a physicist, but he's kind of taken off where Einstein let go.
Okay.
And he's a mathematician and he's physicist. So he's got a whole new unified field theory, you know, that is taking Einstein's to the next level.
Is it like understandable? Does he communicate in a way that you can kind of comprehend what he's trying to talk about? Yeah.
I tell you what, when you get into heavy duty chemistry and physics, it's pretty, if you don't have some background, it's woo woo. He can talk, he talks about it in lay terms a little bit.
I mean,
Joe Rogan asked him some questions.
I just think that people, he's really good at making information applicable. Like, how do we get information? How do we get these brainiac minds to like communicate in a way that we can actually apply this stuff?
Yeah. Eric Weinstein is my new favorite.
Cool. Nice. I like this physicist, Nassim Harim. And he's like, he lived in a van until someone kind of sponsored him because he's just like, he's on another plane. And he makes his information really applicable, mainly to like the spiritual world. So obviously that's like a big community and a lot of people are fixated on that. But like the language of physics is what governs everything. And so it also governs, you know, the spirit world essentially. So it kind of makes all these like physics understandings applicable for like, you know, manifesting your life and all this kind of stuff. So
send me a link. He sounds good. I've got a book on physics sitting over here as well. But nice. I like this Eric Weinstein.
Yeah, send me that one. I'll definitely geek out on that for sure.
Oh boy.
So we got to the small intestine. We're there. Let's kind of finish it up. Like let's continue to just go through the digestive tract. I feel like we
so we've talked about the salivary glands. Thymus is part of our digestive tract as well because it's part of the lymphoid tissue.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the pancreas. We've talked about the gallbladder and the liver.
Yeah.
The organ that we haven't talked about yet is the probiotics.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a whole nother organ.
Wow. Yeah.
And it affects our immune system. It affects our mental. It affects fat.
It's my favorite supplement besides vitamin C. I mean, I notice one dose in the morning and any kind of upset thing that I've had from eating the wrong carbohydrate or whatever it was, it gets settled and it's like, wow, thank God, this is really nice.
Yeah. So, you know, the imbalance of our bugs in our gut called dysbiosis or small intestine SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. Okay. That's a big one in the naturopathic world.
Okay.
So if we have a fungal overgrowth, if we have a viral overgrowth, a bacterial over or undergrowth, or parasites, and it turns out that people living in clean, modern,
sterile,
have more bugs in their gut than people living in the Amazon.
With chickens on their dinner table, eating from the dirt.
So it's very, very common. So the things that affect our digestive tract are imbalance of the bad bugs, an under amount of the good bugs, deficiency of digestive enzymes, the chronic inflammation, use of antibiotics, eating junk food, not eating in a relaxed way, not getting enough exercise. Exercise affects your digestion like big time. If
Yeah.
you're not exercising, I mean, the difference between when you're physically active and not, and how your digestive tract works is profound. Sleep affects it, big time as well. So, but probiotics, 20 years ago, were very rarely even studied. Now it's probably the biggest research topic there is. And the microbiome and the microbiota, it's now recognized as critically important in obesity, in mental illness. To finish up, after the food is digested and broken down, hopefully absorbed through the small intestine or leaked into the body and all the deleterious events that happen because of leaky gut, then it goes into the bowel. The bowel is primarily absorbing water from the fecal matter. And the fecal matter is 50% bacteria. So there's a lot more bugs in the large intestine than there are in the small intestine. And half of the bulk of the fecal matter is bacteria. And then half of it is toxins, and food which is not been digested and passed on through. But it shows you if you're losing, half of your bacteria every day from your bowel movements, how quickly those bacteria are reproducing. It's absolutely phenomenal. So, but that, and then bile, we talked about how important bile is because it's how the liver passes toxins through our digestive tract to eliminate them. Well, bile is so doggone important, it's reabsorbed in the large intestine along with water. That's about the only thing.
Wow.
So bile is a really crazy important substance. By the way, if you've had your gallbladder removed, you should take a bile supplement an hour or two after you eat, because if your gallbladder is removed, then bile is still being produced by the liver, but it's all just dumping into your intestinal tract, whether or not you're eating fat or not. So when you do eat fat, you're not getting enough bile to help it be digested. Bile fat is also helped to be digested by pancreatic enzymes, and also there's enzymatic action in the small intestine that helps break down fats, but bile is really key. So I've had so many people with their gallbladders removed that didn't know that they should be taking bile a couple hours after they eat. That's just absolutely essential.
What happens if they don't? I mean, they're just not going to absorb.
They're not going to digest their fats. And if they're not digesting their fats, that interferes with their digestion of proteins. Because fat helps protein be digested, protein helps fat be digested.
So it's really wrong to be eating all these lean meats. I mean, that's like a health thing.
Well, and especially fats that come from grain, which have high content of omega-6 and low omega-3. Mm-hmm. And omega-6 are pro-inflammatory, omega-3 are anti-inflammatory. So, grain-fed beef the fat is really different. Bad for you. Yeah. Versus grass-fed beef, where it's really good.
People have learned to enjoy the flavor of that versus the grass-fed. When we were getting grass-fed beef, I remember it tasted like seafood. That richness, that rich, fresh flavor of just deep mineral, whatever it was. I just like, wow, this tastes like seafood. How?
You mean the grass-fed filet mignon that we bought by the 15 pounds?
Yeah, that. Yeah, we ate nothing but amazing food. I mean, I still eat amazing food. I shop at Whole Foods, which isn't the best quality, but it's accessible. We have Molokai livestock cooperative, and they have some of the best meat I've ever found. Mm-hmm. They're making themselves more available now on the islands. I just friended them on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be like sharing, because I tried to share it with people before, but like the modern world, everyone wants like the app or just make it easy for me. Even though you could just literally call them and they're the nicest people in the world, and we'll just like, yeah, whatever you want to do, we'll do it. Cool. Let's right on.
So if you have sores in your mouth,
Yeah.
It means that you've got sores in your intestines.
Right.
If,
I've
if
noticed
you
that. Yeah.
if you have heartburn,
Yeah.
if you have um, of course, irritable bowel,
Earwax,
um,
boogers,
colitis,
like those are
ulcerative
symptoms of,
colitis, mucus colitis, diverticuli. If these are all diseases, ulcers
yeah.
are diseases of the intestinal tract. Well, if you've got diseases of the intestinal tract, what do you think that's going to do for the rest of your health? Because, being cancer is a result of malnourishment and toxicity. So the way that you heal cancer is to get nourished. And interestingly, toxicity happens secondarily to malnourishment. So if you become toxic, it's because your liver doesn't have what it needs to take the toxins that are being eliminated and pass them out through your body.
What is
So
what is the gnarliest thing that people do that affects their liver function?
drinking.
Is it really alcohol? Because everyone drinks. Most everyone I know drinks on a weekly basis.
Alcohol is pure poison for the liver, any amount.
Is that what other thing affects the liver?
Then chemicals, toxins.
Toxins. So environmental
Yeah,
house toxins,
yeah,
prescription drugs.
and yeah, and
Stress, is stress a factor on the
yeah.
liver?
But the liver gets sick when you're not nourished.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I learned. Everybody talks, most health food stores and health food magazines are all about detox. Well, you do detox, it's at the peril because you're toxic
Yeah.
primarily because of malnourishment.
So if you're
And
detoxing,
so then you're actually stressing a malnourished system.
and that's how
So
everyone thinks that they're going to attain good health is by detoxing or doing these fasts.
yeah, and that's toxicity as a result of malnourishment and immune deficiency, immune problems, autoimmunity and immune deficiency are a result of malnourishment and toxicity. So you can't heal your immune system by taking mushrooms.
Right. Yeah.
You have
there isn't
to.
some magic bullet.
Yeah, that you affect the immune system by affecting digestion and detoxification. And so to heal your gut, you have to chew, you have to relax, you have to exercise, you have to sleep, you have to forgive, you have to have adequate digestive enzymes, primarily because of stress and malnourishment, you don't have the digestive enzymes. You have to have a healthy balance of bacteria. You have to have proper alkalinity in your small intestine. You have to do things to soothe the lining of your gut. You have to identify the foods that are causing the inflammation, whether or not that's a food intolerance or a food sensitivity. You have to control your blood sugar. You have to take a probiotic. So that's a dozen things that you have to do to heal your gut.
Yeah, that was good. Nice.
And if you don't do all of that,
you're not going to do it.
Then you're not going to ever heal your gut. And if you're overweight, it's because your gut is malfunctioning. So if your gut is not able to absorb and assimilate and you're malnourished, the body then triggers your pancreas and your liver and your adrenals to make fat out of what you eat. So you then convert your food into fat because your body thinks it's starving. So overweight people are starving. So the way to heal overweight is to clean up your digestive tract. So it's not in calorie restriction.
Yeah. It's kind of, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, you're focusing on the root cause of how to just be healthy, and therefore the body will, regulate itself. There is no mistake being made. There isn't any war to be fought. It's just like work with nature. Like, how is the body
Well,
functioning?
and that's true in life. Nothing we do is a mistake. Everything is a learning experience.
Right.
We're mortal beings,
Yeah.
and living in this physical world. We're actually spiritual beings.
We're
And so all
domesticated
of
animals.
all of the things that happen are opportunities to learn something.
Right.
But if you don't learn from your mistakes, if you don't learn from your injuries, if you don't learn from your illness, Ram Dass was talking about it last night, or when I was listening to the seminar on becoming the unknown. Death is one of the greatest learning processes there is.
When I was watching it, I was thinking of you, because you have spent a lot of time with people, in the passing,
And it's like, let's talk about it.
and it's like this complete, like he said, like people get really spiritually deep, people get really honest, people like they realize like all these things now that they're going to the next realm.
And mostly, even counselors don't want to talk about death. And I would talk to them and say, let's talk about this. You're going to die. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, the Tibetan, or like the Egyptian book, the Dead, or the Tibetan book, the Dead, like that's a spiritual practice of recognizing how to live by understanding that you're going to die, so it's like
Take off a tight shoe.
Yeah, it's just like live well, like you're here, you're experiencing things, like,
and die well.
Yeah.
And if you recognize death, it helps you live well.
Exactly.
I sent you that article about that spearfisher guy that died.
Oh, I don't know if I got it, but
yeah, from Australia.
Uh-huh.
He was a champion snowboarder, and he was spearfishing, and some snorkeler found him drowned.
Really?
And and he was spearfishing without the mask or without oxygen, and he drowned.
You mean he was snorkeling without a mask?
Well, he was deep diving without air.
Okay, he was free diving without
Yeah.
Okay.
And spearfishing
by himself.
Yeah, and he's 32, and it's really tragic.
Yeah.
But in knowing that, gee whiz, we could always die. We never know. So live your life as if you're going to die in a week, and don't put things off. Do what you want to do now.
Yeah.
Because you might not have a chance later.
I always like this one where it's like, leave the conversation that you leave people off with. Like if they died tomorrow, you'd be satisfied with how you handled or whatever. I don't know. I use words not always the best way, but I feel like my intention is always is to love, it's just like, hey, like I recognize we all do stupid shit, but like, I really love you, But
I liked how Ram Dass put it. We categorize everybody. Like they're old, they're female, they're male, they're fat, they're skinny, they're ugly, they're handsome, they're rich. None of those things are valid as to a description of what we are.
Yeah.
And then we categorize ourselves.
Well, that's the thing that keeps people so unsatisfied too, is categorizing themselves into those categories and like not recognizing.
Got to be somebody. The mask.
You are this like just a piece of the universe. Like you are connected to everything, and if you want to feel that, you can. You don't have to, associate with all of your societal ego kind of things. And
did you wipe out on my third ride yesterday?
Why? I mean, I ate a lot. Yeah. Why? What do you mean? What do you think?
Well, I told you to ride 3 ways for me.
I got
did
a lot
good with a couple, but one of them, I didn't get a good ride, man.
Nice. I got some really good barrels. People were going off. I mean, my friend VJ, he like went 20 feet in the air because it's 2 waves coming together, and then that energy projects you. And so he's won contests here. He's been surfing this every summer for like 12 years. So he like hit this and just flipped and just like, and it's right next to the rocks too. Like there's like this, this rock wall, like a cliff essentially. And he's in no regard. I told him, I was like, you got MVP this session. Like you had no regard whatsoever for your safety. It was amazing. Um, and
Wow.
yeah, it
Maybe
was fun.
that's what because I felt one was pretty wicked. I got a
Yeah.
couple of good rides, but one of them was like, it was like I went into the black water.
Yeah. I mean, I was going into barrels where it's like this steep and you just have to lay flat when you're done with the ride. You don't, you kind of stop yourself. There's a technique to learn how to organize yourself under the chaos of a wave,
Oh,
especially
absolutely.
when it detonates. Like you anchor yourself in certain ways. And I always think that's why I love surfing so much is because I move my body in such awkward
Yeah.
underwater. You're just like,
Oh, it's
and nowhere.
you wouldn't want anybody to watch it
No, it's
because
kind of weird.
you're upside down with your
Yeah.
foot in your nose, and I mean,
Yeah.
at Sandy's is that's where you got to really just let it go.
Yeah.
You
That's
you know
it.
you have to just get tossed like crazy,
Yeah.
and it's not pretty.
No,
You're contorted like crazy, but you gotta just gotta be
you
part of the wave.
yeah, you relax and you can't struggle against it. And that's where people exhaust themselves in the water. And that's where people freak out in the water is like you have to be fluid in and like, if you're getting worked, like let yourself get worked, protect your head, but let yourself just get freaking
Yeah, but
ragdolled
then real
and
different
struggle.
when you're got the shore break, when you're dealing with coral reefs and stuff like that. See, I've never done that.
It's
I
a,
watch these crazy guys with these pieces of wood on their hands
uh-huh.
to keep from getting cut up on the coral. I went, that's nuts.
What, when they were body surfing?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I watch it sometimes. These guys are bodyboarding over dry reef. Like, I'm like, what? Why would you? But you can if you know.
Well, pipeline is sort of similar.
Oh yeah, pipeline is it's a dangerous animal for sure. And I've gotten myself into some situations. And by getting myself into the situations, I kind of like I mean, you recognize that it's doable, but obviously the more time you spend out there, you're gonna pay it's a powerful wave on a slab of reef with caves, but it's a flat. That's why it's such a perfect reeling wave. It's just this flat bottom, and
It's so beautiful.
I mean, it's a perfect wave if you maneuver yourself into the wave where you don't have to eat shit. It's great, but there's times where the sets come and you're stuck inside, and you're gonna get. I've broken so many leashes last year, like because I'll ditch my board and grab onto the bottom or swim close because there's less turbulence when you're like this close to the reef than this close to the reef.
Interesting.
So you get kind of close to it, but you're still gonna fly across that reef and then maybe hit your back or something. So you just kind of like position yourself to protect yourself. But I mean, I learned you taught me how to swim in the ocean without knowing how to swim. You brought me in these waves that were probably 3 feet high, body surfing with you towards shore, and riding on your back. And then I mean, thinking back on it now, I recall these times in my memory where it's like we'd lose one another. You're somewhere else. I'm here. I don't know how to swim. But I would just, calm down and sink to the bottom and jump up and get a breath and then maybe go back
And
down.
water
Like,
would come out of your nose and out of your mouth, and you'd say, "Fine."
yeah, how are you? Fine, fine. And I was,
And
and that was like
I'm pretty sure I would be arrested for doing that.
yeah, for
And
sure.
I knew it. There were some waves. It's like, oh shit.
But it's like your confidence in me and my confidence in you allowed that. Like, if you were scared for me, then I would be scared, like this is that like intuition, like animal instinct kind of thing where it's like you project your emotions on other people. So if you project this like strong, like just comfortable, not even strong, just if you're comfortable, then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're good. But if you're afraid, if you're overreactive, that's when you get yourself out of the.
I can remember a few of those where I went, oh shit,
Yeah.
here we go.
I
Hold
mean,
on.
it's because of that I put myself into these situations now. I mean, I'm not the most technical or skilled wave rider, and I kind of don't want to be. It's fun just to kind of be loose and weird and like just see what happens. But I will go out there and take the biggest wave that I can, and in hopes of. And I've just been around waves long enough to where I just kind of know how to eject properly, I guess.
I watched some Laird Hamilton videos of Choi Poo,
Yeah.
like on the red day, on the biggest day ever.
Yeah, that's insane.
That wave, it's indescribable.
I mean, that wave to me was like more gnarly than Pipeline growing up. I was like, I want to go to Chopu. That seems amazing, phenomenal. But yeah, watching him and Nathan Fletcher like just throw themselves into these 40-foot caverns, like knowing for sure that they're going to get blasted. Like, but yet they're here today. I mean, I see Nathan Fletcher driving on the road all the time. Like he is just like, hey, I mean, I see him at Pipeline. He's like, hey, I mean, he talks about how his body is sore and it hurts. And, you know, he's put himself into these like situations that, and I have too, where your body just gets wrecked, but you make it out. And that's the kind of cool thing about surfing is like all these people are, you're catching these waves, you're riding these waves, but you're also eating massive shit, but you're going to pop out most likely. And so you have like the most detonating wave of your life, but you get to pop up and be like, oh, that was kind of cool. Whereas skating or snowboarding, if you don't make the landing, like you're gonna pay for it. Like you're gonna hurt a lot.
Interesting. That's
so
interesting.
Surfing is kind of fun. Like it's forgiving like that.
Yeah.
I went surfing this week a few times, but I've been getting more into like spearfishing, and I went spearfishing a couple times, and I've been practicing my bow a bunch. Just to kind of pass the time, and I'm also kind of training to get ready for next winter. So that's
there are people dying in Orange County on the beaches today.
You mean from the waves?
No, from COVID.
Oh,
it's hot as hell. The beaches are packed today. Then there's going to be dozens of people that are going to catch the virus and die.
Oh yeah, I've talked to my friends for sure, and everyone seems like they're just really frustrated and kind of over it, and that's going to lead to a lot of stupid behavior because and a lot of people are like, this isn't even real, and it's like, I mean, it is real to a lot of people, and they're getting sick and dying, and then to some people they're not getting sick. But
yeah, it's maybe 2 out of 100 that die, but if you're one of those, it's a miserable, badass death.
Right. What it's like 50% are symptomless, and then 50% kind of go through the ringer.
Yeah, and a lot of people survive it, but they're also finding that there's long-term consequences for those that did survive.
Because it's your veins just inflame or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can affect your brain, delirium, it can affect your liver, it can affect your GI tract, it can affect your joints, your heart, your kidneys.
It's kind of weird to think that this is happening.
It's horrible.
And then
in Orange County, they should be stay at home. And I think the governor said a week ago, stay at home, but they're not.
Well,
and whereas they closed the beaches on the 4th of July, they're open today. And I'll bet you anything that they're packed beyond belief.
It started out as a deadly virus, and it ended as an IQ test. You know, it's just like, are you able to kind of, well, there's a lot of, like everything, there's misinformation being spread, and people are like wanting to think about the more convenient way to think about this versus, and you know, there's a lot of anti-government.
And why can't they think? We talked about it today.
We're malnourished and toxic. So, you know, you listen to people who do sound like they know what they're talking about, and maybe they don't know what they're talking about, but you know, like in America, we worship actors and people who come across as like, yes, I know, I am pretending. And it's like, so you listen to one of those people who have no education, and then people with no education listening to those people, and you're going to end up
Bill Gates is trying to take over the world, man.
I mean, I look into everything. Like, you know me, I listen to literally what anyone has to say, and I'm interested in the story. I'm just interested that this is
I do too.
Story that is being spread. So I'm like, okay, tell me your piece. Like, I'm interested. Let me know like how you've.
But I get a little deeper than most.
Well, yeah.
So I mean, you know, Bill Gates is not my favorite person, but he's not intentionally trying to take over the world. Fauci is not really just trying to make money on vaccines. It's not 5G.
I mean,
you know, it is dangerous, and
there is some truth to the fact that the masses have been treated like cattle, and the elites at some point have turned off their empathy meter, and they are doing things to make money off of the masses. And that's kind of
Disaster capitalism.
that.
I read an incredibly good article today on a new economy, and it's one of the deepest, best articles I've read that you'll love. I don't know if I think I
The new
forwarded it to
economy.
you.
Cool.
You need
I mean,
to check your emails.
if you, yeah, I do every once in a while. You know, if you want to make a lot of money, you have to do something that affects everyone. You need a dollar from everyone. You don't need, you know what I mean? So that's what computers are. That's why Bill Gates is so rich. I mean, literally every person uses a computer in the world, or most everyone. So that's money that he's brought in, you know. And so you look at Amazon, it's like he made it so convenient for people to buy goods, and he just takes a percentage. Everyone is using it around the world. So it's like a vaccine.
30% of goods in America are now bought off of Amazon. He wanted 50%. He's up to 30 already.
I mean, he will get it. So, I mean, but so like, there is some truth to the fact that like a mandatory vaccine, untested, given to everyone, like there's money to be made, and these guys are not like doing things philanthropy.
Well, the CDC makes something like $4-6 billion a year on vaccines.
Right.
I
So
mean,
it's like,
you know me. I'm
know.
not a vaccine kind of guy, but I also know immunology, and I actually know people that have made vaccines and have patents, like on the polio vaccine, and they're friends.
Right.
So when I hear all the nonsense, I mean, I'm well aware of the dangers of vaccinations, but I know the history.
Right.
I mean, and people don't. Hey, I got to get going.
Yeah, good, because we're gonna spend all day talking like this.
Yeah.
This was really good. I appreciate.
Who are you, Joe Rogan or something?
Not even. Cool. Yeah, this was really fun. We should do
Let's
another
talk
one
about
soon.
female hormones next time.
Okay, that'd be great. Let's do that one.
Okay.
Cool.
All
right, love you, Dad.
Okay.
Okay.
Have fun today.
Thank you. Yeah, you too.